This is Standing Watch. And now, Evangelist Norbert Link.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. As you have heard, Angela Merkel resigned as the leader of the biggest German party, the CDU, and was replaced by a person who is abbreviated as AKK. Her real name is Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, but most Germans don't even remember that name either, and so they have called her and are calling her AKK. And AKK said that she is going to follow the footsteps of Angela Merkel, but at the same time she is realizing that she can't do that completely because it was the politics of Angela Merkel leading to her resignation. And so she has already made some interesting comments and has pursued some actions differentiating herself from Angela Merkel. Handelsblatt Global wrote on December 7 that she could deal differently than Merkel with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. In other words, being tougher than Merkel. And Newsmax wrote on December 7 that she said that Europe and the United States of America should consider blockading Russian ships over the Ukrainian crisis, meaning sending warships into the area. War, my friends, is in the air. The signs are there. BBC wrote on December 7 that she is in favor of reinstating the draft in Germany. Now, why would she do that? Obviously, the politicians are thinking of a dangerous development. And even though they may see what is happening on the world scene, most in the United States of America and the UK do not see it. And I'm talking about the general public. Listen to this article by The Independent, dated December 12. The international security landscape is the most uncertain politically and strategically in living memory. The head of Britain's military has warned. The constant confrontation across the world is reminiscent of the first decade of the 20th century that led to World War I. He pointed to a worrying lack of knowledge or interest among the public. People don't really study history any longer, he said, pointing to a recent survey of 2,000 people about the First World War. Now listen to that incredible statistic. 50% thought Winston Churchill was a prime minister at the time. 10% thought it was Margaret Thatcher. 20% thought we were fighting the French. 6% thought it was President Kennedy's assassination that triggered the war. And when asked what the bloodiest battle of the war was, 16% voted for Pearl Harbor, 8% for Independence Day, 7% for Hastings, and 5% for Helm's Deep, who thought it was a battle in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Let me just say, my friends, that the seed of this contemptible, willful ignorance of historical events will reap a terrible harvest. There is going to be a real confrontation. Now, most think it may be between Europe and Russia. Now, that may happen later. In fact, it will happen later, but not initially. Initially, a confrontation will take place between continental Europe and the United States of America and Great Britain. Now, right now, the ongoing Brexit debacle, and every day something new seems to happen, is not going to prevent the outcome. And the outcome is there's going to be a Brexit. Now, there's also going to be a confrontation then between continental Europe and the UK, but I want to focus today on the confrontation which we already are seeing, which is going to become much more serious between the EU and the United States. And first, let's talk about the almighty dollar, which isn't that almighty anymore. The EU Reporter wrote on December 7 that EU President Juncker highlighted the strategic importance of the euro and the need to ensure that the single currency can play its full role on the international scene. And the EU Commission calls on member states to promote the wider use of the euro. In spite of their position as large buyers as well as major producers, European businesses still trade in US dollar in key strategic markets. This exposes businesses to currency risks and political risks, such as, notice, unilateral decisions by the United States that directly affect dollar-denominated transactions. And then they go on to say that the euro is today the second most important international currency, and that public support for the euro has been consistently high in the EU, especially in the countries already using the euro. Europeans, the article says, identify the euro as one of the main symbols of the European Union. And even though there have been voices over the years saying the euro is doomed to fail, the euro is going to go away, we have consistently told you no. The euro is here to stay. It's a glue which keeps European countries together, and it's going to be much more powerful and thereby replacing the US dollar. Now, the US is not going to like that. And so there is a collision course already happening at this point insofar as the economy is concerned. But it's not going to stop there. Here's an article by Politico, dated December 11. The EU is regulation obsessed, out of touch, and stalling trade negotiations with Washington, US President Donald Trump's ambassador to the EU said Monday. And Trump is going to put a stop to it, the ambassador Gordon Sondland warned. We now have to recognize that the relationship and all of the goodwill that has been built up since the Marshall Plan doesn't seem to count when it comes to getting a little consideration, Sondland said. Washington and Brussels have been engaged in high-stakes trade wars and trade talks. Sondland's remarks made clear that Washington is now fed up with what it views as egregious delaying tactics by Brussels. There are a multitude of tools available to the president, beyond just tariffs on cars, to make it more difficult for Europe to sell its products to America, and I think all of those tools are on the table, Sondland warned. He also said that he finds the bloc to be utterly obstructionist. We don't ever beg. That's not our style. But we do what we need to do in order to fix a problem. And if it cannot be done voluntarily and in a cooperative fashion, it will have to be done in other ways, he said. And he also accused EU members of NATO of resisting Trump's push for increased military spending on the alliance, while being willing to raise spending on the EU's own security and defense projects. In other words, creating a competition to NATO. And finally, Sondland criticized the EU for taking a protectionist approach to military procurement, putting US manufacturers at an unfair disadvantage. So we see there is already a collision course between the United States of America and the EU pertaining to, at this point, mainly economic matters. Now, President Trump has already called the EU the enemy of the United States when it comes to trade issues. But you see, my friends, it's not going to stay there. It's going to go beyond just a collision course of trade issues. The Bible clearly prophesies that a war is going to break out between the United States of America and the EU. Let's say core Europe. The Bible talks about 10 nations or groups of nations under a military leader who is going to launch a nuclear attack on the United States of America and Great Britain. Now, you may not believe that. You may not think that is possible. Are you going to be as ignorant as the majority of the public in the United States of America and Great Britain is, or are you waking up? Do you want to know? Because being willfully ignorant is not going to change what's going to happen. You can know. In fact, you must know, because God also shows you a way of escape. But you need to know what is going to happen so that you can be prepared. We have prepared a free booklet, Europe in Prophecy. This booklet talks about Europe, but it also talks about the United States and the relationship between Europe and the United States. You need to read what is written in this booklet because it's based on biblical prophecy, on the scriptures in your Bible, showing you what is going to happen in the near, and I mean near, future. And until next time, this is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.
Standing Watch is a presentation by The Church of the Eternal God, P.O. Box 270519, San Diego, California 92198. More information is also available at our website, eternalgod.org.